You are live, Commissioner. Okay, good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners meeting. This is a board work session. It is Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. It is 9:03 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Joining me in the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards. We have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, as well as many staff from our human resources, including Director Maria Aponte. Our agenda today, we will be discussing the budget, human resources, internal services rates. And with that, I am passing it straight to Robin.
Yeah, I'll kick this off. Good morning. And over the next few days, commissioners have meetings to review internal service rates. And this is one of the first steps in budget development. Our internal service providers in HR, central services, IT, and financial services actually started work in February to develop the rates that you're going to see in the next few days. And you will recall that internal service rates are the infrastructure, if you will, to provide the types of services that any organization needs. It's human resources, processing payroll, taking care of our computers, providing phone service, taking care of our buildings, making our cars run, handling our money, all of those kinds of things that any organization needs to be successful, also called back office type of things. And in government, what you generally see is internal services are provided by core offices or departments where their customers are the offices and departments across the county whose customers are the citizens. So the first step for the board in budget development is to approve the internal service rates. And that's what you're going to be hearing about over the next few days. We're starting with HR today. Maria will present to you the restricted internal service funds on how, she'll talk a little bit about how the rates are set. And you'll hear that from each of the offices and departments that you meet with over the next few days. These are services that the county can't run without. They're distributed according to state laws and federal guidance. And in Thurston County, we follow best practices in how we allocate this money. So it's very important, and thank you ladies for being here today, and I'm going to turn it off to Maria.
Thank you, Robin, for that introduction. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Maria Ponte, HR Director. With me today is Tammy Devlin. She's our Risk Manager. Tara Wickline, our Compensation and Benefits Manager. And via Zoom is my Executive Assistant, Sarah Walker. She'll be presenting our slideshow. And unless you have any initial questions, we'll just go ahead and get started.
Welcome, Sarah. And I think it's the first time I've seen her in any of her meetings.
Perfect. So. Great. So as Robin said, today we'll be presenting on our unemployment fund, our benefits administration, our brand new buyout fund, and the risk management fund. I will kick it off with the unemployment fund. This fund covers the administration of the county self-insured unemployment program. We've been self-insured for over 20 years, and we utilize the Washington State Employment Security Department to process our unemployment claims, and they bill us on a quarterly basis. The county has been allocating this rate at a 0.3% for a number of years now, and it's based on the total payroll cost per office and department, and it's approximately $200,000 to $250,000 a year annually. This budget's 0.6 FTEs within the HR department that monitor the budget, process the claims. When Employment Security receives a claim, they notify us and we verify it's our employee and the reasons for the termination. Our goal here is to have a budget about 1.5 million to 2 million. This would cover up to 2 years of unemployment claims and expenses in the event of a major layoff, which we define as a 10 to 15% of the workforce. If you look at our 10-year financial plan, you have that before you, and it's not too small for you to read. Our payments for claims in 2019 were only $35,500 for the entire year. We've seen that progressing just incrementally. So in 2020, 92,000. In 2021, 124,000. First quarter for 2022, we've already paid 51,000. Some of that increase is due to layoffs. We hired a number of temporary employees to assist with the public health and social services, the IMT, and as they start to demobilize, we are starting to lay off employees who are filing claims. And so we're forecasting a little bit higher in 2022, hoping to see that decline in the ensuing years. But if things go as forecasted, we'll be right there at that threshold of 2 million. And if we get to a point where that fund starts to go above 2 million, we will work with the budget team to make whatever adjustments are necessary. And so with that, I can either hand it off to Tammy and you can ask questions later, or if you prefer to ask questions now.
We'll go ahead and start asking questions now, Maria, if that's okay. Go ahead, Commissioner.
You mentioned that we need to have coverage for 3 years if we do a major layoff.
Up to 2 years.
Oh, 2 years. Okay, but even at 2 years, if we do a major layoff, is that an incremental layoff? And that's why you need the 2 years? Because you don't need to cover unemployment that long, do you?
Well, as some people come on, some fall off, right? And so that's where it is incremental. And so we want that fund to be healthy to be able to make, to pay that out.
So you wouldn't be laying off 20 people at one time. You'd be laying off 3 at a time progressively as things deteriorate? I'm trying to think of how this fits over a longer period of time than what people are gonna be eligible to draw.
So it does depend, it all depends on
That's
what
a good
fund you're,
lawyer's
well,
answer, it
my
depends.
professor in college said that that's the right answer to everything.
It is, I know.
So it depends on the fund. Some of our funds are very volatile. You yourself have been talking about the potential for the housing starts and the building to fall off, in which case we could have a major problem in our building permit fund, as we saw when the Great Recession began, where quite a few people were laid off all at once out of that particular office.
Right.
On the other hand, as you know, we've built up a substantial fund balance in the general fund, and we have the rainy day fund, so it's highly unlikely, even if we had an economic downturn, that we'd be laying off a lot of people who are funded from the general fund.
But
So-
let me just give you the counter,
Sure.
so you can clarify for me. But if that downturn was to come, we wouldn't want to keep those folks on just to keep them on.
That's right.
You know, I mean, because there wouldn't be work, there wouldn't be permits coming across the counter because nobody's going to be building. So
That's right.
I want to make sure we balance that out. I don't want to have people standing around doing nothing either. So
Yeah,
it's a
no,
combination.
nobody does.
Okay.
And you have to protect the fund. So not to say we're not protecting the people, which is why we ensure that there's a robust balance in the unemployment insurance fund so that the money is there should we need it. And we found at the beginning of the recession, there was massive layoffs. in the county. And that's kind of the predicating event that we keep referring back to. We don't expect that to happen again anytime soon, but you keep, this is an insurance type of fund.
Okay.
You keep the money here if you need it. And as Maria said, we adjust, if the fund balance gets too high, we've done rebates out of this fund, we reduced the rate that we collect, but right now it's sitting at right about the right point.
Yeah, and I believe you may recall this, maybe you, when we had a rebate related to the issue on the budget with the clerk's office. That's how the rebate was help us to mitigate the gap.
We pulled out about $1 million
out
in
of this.
excess fund
So I
balance.
think $1 million, which probably 600,000 went to the general fund.
Yeah.
So, and that was the result of the 2008, 2009 recession. We needed to build that fund a little bit higher, which we didn't need it at that point, but it helped us to mitigate that.
You hope you never need this, but it's there if you do.
Is it available for something like the rainy day fund if things, or does it always have to go towards this type of compensation?
The unemployment insurance fund, it's a restricted fund, it's an insurance type fund. It's collected on there's a bill, if you will, to every county fund that we all pay in at an equitable rate. And so if you can't just take this money and like transfer it to the rainy day fund.
I thought maybe you might be able to do something like, okay, general fund employees paid in X, so, you know, one
Pull out
half.
X.
One half of
But
the
then you're
fund is
not
from
treating
general
the
fund.
road fund that paid in a fair and equitable manner.
Okay.
This is where
It goes
the
back
fair and
when
equitable state
the board
law.
decided to take $1 million out of this fund.
Yeah,
It needed to go back to the originated funds, and that it materialized out of the million, only 600,000 went back to the general fund.
Okay.
yeah, because it's approximately a 60-40
Oh,
split.
it's 64,
So,
okay.
so any fund
Yeah.
that paid in got a benefit of
Okay.
paying out.
And other funds got the benefit as well.
Yep, all the funds.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No.
I have a question in regards to that $2 million goal. So how is that set and how do we came up with that number?
I think that was based on experience from those 2008 to about 2010, because we did see layoffs. So for instance, our permit center, they pretty much were gutted, but then later on, we saw the state not providing grants, so we were laying off grant positions. And so based on those costs, this was established by policy. It does predate me, so if you needed more details, I'd be glad to do some research. And again, it's something we can certainly reevaluate. We can't always predict who's going to file unemployment claims. What we're seeing are people that have gone out of state that in the last year, we've seen a lot of that they're filing claims. Someone could go take a job elsewhere, that doesn't work out, they file a claim. So it's somewhat unpredictable. Other than pre-2020, everybody just appeared to be working and not filing claims, and like I said, so 35,000, I think during that great recession period, I think a year's worth was 600,000 in claims that were paid out, so it can get volatile during periods of layoff.
Do we ever object to claims?
We do.
Okay, good, okay.
And then my next question is, you here have 10 to 15% of the workforce, and 10 to 15% of the workforce has increased over the years. And so if, there were to be layoffs to that scale, would this fund be able to cover the 10 to 15% of the workforce at where we are now with all these, with how our workforce has grown over the years?
So that's what we're forecasting, and that's why we also adjust the rate. So I think why that fund got so healthy after 2012, I think, was we had raised it to 1%, and then it never got readjusted, and so it kept growing. So if we find ourselves in that position, I could be sitting here a year from now saying, we need to increase this rate to 0.5 or 1%. If we weren't self-insured, we'd be paying the state 1.1%. So us being self-insured, it just allows us to be more flexible and adapt to our circumstances in a much more timely fashion.
And the proposed rate is 0.3%. So you can see where that pulls in about 280,000 a year, where 1% would have been pulling in 3 times that much. That's how the fund got so fat.
And the proposal is to remain status quo.
So,
Just-
so when you say
0.3%.
proposed, the proposed is 0.03? 0.3. And that's what it is today as well?
That is
So
correct.
we're proposing no change?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good.
I just want to clarify because it's
Yeah.
status quo, no change.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No change in rate.
Great, so with that, I'll hand off the next portion of our presentation to Tara, and she'll talk about the benefits fund and the new lead buyout fund.
Thank you. Okay, so our benefits fund, this fund pays for 2.7 FTEs. What those FTEs do is they provide the administration for all of the benefits for employees in the county. In addition to that, what they do is they also are the compensation side of payroll in the county. So any new hires, terminations, any employee change, any salary changes, COLAs, anything that has to do with an employee and their paycheck goes through the employees that are paid by this fund first. They are then also going through and reviewing union contracts, our personnel rules, making sure that every change happening follows county policy and our rules and procedures. The rates are allocated out per FTE. So what we do is we calculate what we need for the year and we allocate that out by FTE. So larger departments are gonna pay more because they have more people, but that keeps it pretty fair and equitable. The goal for this fund is to keep about a $200,000 reserve in it to cover 3 months of operating costs, and any ACA liabilities, should those ever occur. We hope they never do, they shouldn't. But just in case, we want to be prepared. And part of that 3-month operating cost kind of goes back to the unemployment fund conversation. If there are layoffs, these are the employees you're going to need to have around to deal with that and process all of those kind of changes. So the rates for this fund have been returned to a sustainable level. This is also a fund that in prior years had grown quite large. So for a few years, we had very low rates, just trying to bring the fund down to that 200,000 level. And as of last year and this year, it's at the point, the rate is at the point where it's just sustainable. It's not meant to grow, it's not meant to reduce anything. For 2023, we are not proposing any change to the rate that we proposed last year for the biennial budget. The rate this year, it brings in a total of 293,000. And for next year, we're only proposing 297,000, which again is what we had proposed last year. And we're not anticipating any change to that. Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner?
No.
So what is it, I mean, does it matter what the number is? The rate per FTE? That brings in 297,000?
Well, it depends on how many, what we do is we take the number of FTEs in the county and then the number of FTEs in each department and break that into a percentage of FTEs. And that's how we allocate out the 297. So public health will get 30% of that amount.
Oh, so
and
you're
that's what
starting with
they
the number, you're starting with the
Right.
end number.
They know how much they need to collect to sustain the fund balance.
So this one will be status quo as well?
Yes.
That one I'm.
Whereas the previous one fluctuates because the board may increase salary, you said total payroll cost.
Correct, yes, because that's
Percentage
based on
The
payroll.
board may increase that or eliminate a position, and then that could change.
Right.
But this one's calculated in a completely different way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, offices and departments, they pay, their portion of the rate is then, I believe, billed, monthly to them, so they have the exact same amount coming out of their budget every month for the year, which also makes it easier for them to budget for.
Thank you.
Next, we have a brand new fund.
Yes, thank you, commissioners, for creating this
Yes.
buyout fund.
Absolutely, this is one that I believe people have been asking for a very long time. So the leave buyout fund, I'm sure you remember from the budget process, this fund was created to assist offices and departments with the large cash outs that occur when someone retires. It currently will pay for 25% of the retirement cash out for employees' vacation, sick time, or alternative leave cash outs. The rates are allocated as a 0.35% surcharge on salaries. This is another fund that we are, with it being brand new, we would like to build it up somewhat. We're also not completely certain what future expenses will look. It's kind of a guess at this point. So we did look at, I think, the last 8 to 10 years of experience of what we had paid out in retirement cash outs, kind of use that as a guide to get a starting point of what we expect. But again, this is one we don't want to do anything with the rate. We want to keep it status quo until we have at least a year or two of experience and some sense of what's coming out of this fund versus what's coming in.
So how has it been so far? What have you seen just so far in the first half of this year?
I believe the first half of this year we've paid out, I believe it was 36,000. We do have quite a few retirements the end of June. That's popular months to retire. June and December are the most popular months. So in part of the estimate of what will be paid out this year, I did include everyone that I'd heard about retiring and estimated on the high end. If they kept all their leave that they had today and retired in December, that's what we're kind of looking at. Chances are they're going to use some before then, but.
So it's really too early to tell how this is going, really early on. So I believe that HR is recommending to the board that we leave it the way it is right now until we get a little more experience
Until we
on
see
how
the
it's actually
rising
gonna be used.
materializes next year, so.
Exactly.
It looks to me though like it's, like we're being conservative, if you put it that way, in terms of the dollars that are projected to come in versus what you just said.
Right,
I mean, even if, it looks like what, you've got, where is it telling me what comes in each year, the 300,000
Yeah.
or something?
Yes.
334,000 roughly.
And it's been 36,000 so far this year.
Right, yeah.
So that this fund could end up growing, and when we would reduce that 0.35 rate
Yes.
at some point in the future.
That's exactly right.
The board may have several options to reduce the rate or maybe increase the benefits
Increase the
more
benefit
than
that we did.
25%.
Yeah.
Right, go to a third.
I mean, that is really the options the board may have down the road. Absolutely.
Did other departments in offices, then they paid out 100,000 or something during that same time frame? Because you picked up 25%, right? So, I mean, it's not exact, but so they also paid out, but at a lesser amount than they would have if we had not created this fund.
Right. And those offices and departments had to absorb that
Right.
within the budget because the board did not authorize budget authority specifically.
And when you talk about absorb, do they do that through vacancy savings and such?
That's one way that offices and departments will absorb cost is vacancy savings, savings in other areas. It's up to each office and department to decide how.
Harder for the smaller.
It's much harder for a small organization,
And you heard
yes.
that from the treasurer's office
Yeah.
that was really the
Right.
argument that he presented to you. That's,
Although the sheriff is quite clear that it's difficult for his office to absorb his retirement payouts.
Why June and December? Is it because of the beginning of summer and then the end of the year?
I think December, I think some people do just want to start off the new year, retired and free. June has to do a lot with how the COLAs work with our pension system, because you have to be retired under the DRS for a full 12 months before you receive your first COLA. And COLAs are given every July 1st. So if you retire June 30th, you're going to get a COLA as soon as you possibly can, so.
December 1st, it's,
18 months.
18 months, yeah, basically.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Hand it out to Tam.
Yeah. Not right away. You're probably right.
The next fund is the insurance 5050 fund. That functions for 3.2 FTEs, myself and 2 risk analysts and a portion of our front desk person. This manages our safety program, our general liability insurance programs, risk management and loss control. And if you look at our 10-year financial plan, the lion's share of this budget is our property insurance, our liability insurance. If you look at 2023 total expenditures, I'm actually anticipating a $700,000 increase in insurance premiums between 2022 and 2023. Between 2021 and 2022, it's about $300,000. Although I don't know for a fact, this is a crystal ball, we won't know what our insurance premiums will be this year until we have our risk pool meeting in July. And so this is just a guess estimate based on talking to the executive director of the risk pool and looking at the insurance markets. And as you recall, last couple of years, the risk pool went from $100,000 deductible to $1 million, and then the next year they went to a $2 million. Having a larger deductible, that means that they needed to raise capital with all the members. And so that's where you're seeing a lot of this insurance premium increase. So yeah, the rates are gonna go up about 700,000 is my estimate. I'm hoping it's less, but that's how we'll see where it goes. We're pretty much 100% allocation, so I try to figure out what the revenues are, figure out what my expenditures are, and then match the revenues to that expenditure. The lion's share of the rates, how they're allocated out to the various funds, most of it's by FTE. And then the general liability is frequency and severity of claims. So if you have departments that have more general liability claims and higher payouts, they get a little bit more of a cost charge to them. And the fund balance is pretty much actuarially estimated. They guesstimate about a $3.5 million, that's a 70% confidence level. If we want a 90% confidence level, if you see back to 2019 and 20, we're looking at beginning fund balance about $5 billion. But the fund balance is basically cash minus current liabilities. So we really actually, according to Robin, we actually have around $5 million in cash available for this restricted fund to pay out claims and that sort of thing.
So what you see, the big difference between 2020 and 2021 isn't that we suddenly paid out $2.5 million. What changed there is an accounting rule. GASB made a change on how we account for pensions and liabilities.
Yes.
And so you see that an accounting entry was made in 2021 that was $2.5 million that we'd never had to make before. It's a simple accrual. It does not affect the cash in the account. So I think it's all right that the fund balance looks like less because the cash balance is as high as it ever was.
Yes.
which is confusing, but thank you, Gatsby.
Question?
What's that term that we use, something joint and severability? You know, where deep pockets,
Self-insurance program?
no, the deep pockets deal
Joint
where
and
we get,
several liability.
what is it?
Joint and several
and
liability.
Yeah, joint, yeah. I hear that all the time when we're dealing with the risk pool. And I don't understand why, because if I had to guess, I'm gonna say that's one of the bigger drivers of what we put out is because the deadbeat doesn't have much insurance and the victim's gonna collect. And they're gonna collect because of that. I don't understand why the municipal and county governments don't really get together and try and put a lid on that through our state legislature. I mean, it's one of the bigger problems for I think Oregon, Washington, and California are.
California
Big
California has comparative, so Washington, so joint several liability and it's called contributory negligence versus comparative. And it's kind of the old way, and most states have gone to the more modern way, and Washington
Just hasn't followed.
just hasn't. I mean, I don't know the history of this here, but I was surprised to hear that because Alaska and California, where I practiced law most of my career, have comparative. So if the jury deems you 20% liable, then you can't, for the fault, you can't be liable for more than 20% of the damages.
In other,
It's proportional, yeah, in California.
oh, I didn't know California had changed.
But in a state like Washington, if you're even 1% liable,
Yeah,
you could be.
then you're the deep
And
pocket.
then they want you to go after the other people, and it's up to, and yeah, so you can really get hammered as the deep
Right.
pocket.
So
And that's something that I am surprised it hasn't, I agree with you, I'm surprised there hasn't been a move to change that because Washington's
There has
behind.
been in the past, attempts by the Washington State Association of Counties. There's a lot of the cities.
Forecast, they've been.
State
There's a
agencies.
lot of bills that have been introduced over the years to try to address that.
Why don't we make that one of our priorities? Because it's affecting all the jurisdictions the same way. I just don't get why we don't put more emphasis on
That
it.
has been a priority of WASAC, but if you think about who the other stakeholders are that lobby
Oh,
against
I know
that,
trial attorneys and
Well,
such, I know.
Insurance
Insurance
companies, trial
companies.
attorneys, they got this, so.
Yeah, I know,
they've got a lot
but,
more influence.
but the reality is, especially like Ty is pointing out, I mean, if we've got others that are coming around to the modern way of doing business, why shouldn't we, I guess, I don't think we should ever, I'm not very good at shutting up and rolling over.
Perhaps this is the
No,
right
I
time of the
agree.
year. Commissioner Mejia has already started conversations at WASAC and the legislative priorities for next year. That may be an avenue. On July 15th, your planning session, Deborah Manguillo is gonna come. And hopefully we'll start talking
Could we
about the
kind of be
counties.
pushing that, because I
Yeah.
think it's a big issue for all.
We're not as sympathetic as the insurance companies and the counties aren't as sympathetic as the aggrieved plaintiffs and that then don't get their payout because there's nobody there to pay it when they've got really, compelling case.
Yeah.
Trial attorneys, they have been opposed to that for a long time.
Oh, I realize that, but we need to do something.
No, I don't disagree.
You know, I don't blame them for squawking about a percent of their, income comes from that.
Preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, but I really think we need to push a little harder and get others aboard, see what we can't do.
Right.
I don't know.
So back to the budget, for this fund. One of the things you'll see in risk, and because we only look at 10 years, you don't get some of the history. This fund had grown, like the other HR funds, it had a very substantial fund balance in past years. And so we reduced the rates quite a bit to bring the fund balance down, and it's down. And the whole accounting thing in 21 confounds this conversation. But had you not had that. What you will see is, as you know, the cost of insurance has gone up. And so we had to, again, bring the rates up to match the payouts. So you see in the revenue that it's growing. We're gradually increasing the rates over a period of 4 years. You see it go up in '23, that was already planned and accounted for in the 2023 budget as the second year of the biennium, and you'll see it go up again in 2024 to bring us into a stable state.
Robin, is there a minimum fund balance that we have to have in this
So
fund?
So the risk fund is one of our insurance funds. And as Tammy said, we have an actuarial estimate and we try to maintain the fund at approximately 80 to 90% funded of the actuarially required amount. That is a financially responsible, and doesn't the risk pool require that we maintain it at a minimum percent?
The state, yeah, actually, the state risk manager is 70%
We have to
confidence
be at
level.
at least 70%.
At least.
Which is,
Right,
yeah, which is the 3 point, around 3.2 is the actuarial estimate. We'd like to have around 90% because, again, that actuarial estimate is only general liability. So let's say we had a cat loss and we needed to come up with a whole bunch of deductibles for if a building goes down or whatnot. That would come out of this fund as well, and we have to have an accounting for that. So I try to add another $1.5 million or so in case we have a huge earthquake and several of our different complexes go down.
Right, and there's funding for cyber in
Yes.
here, there's a small part of the pool is maintained in case we have a HIPAA case that goes against us. This is our insurance
So
fund.
what is the 70% of 90% of what exactly? What do
The
you?
actuary determines if the county were to close tomorrow, what is gonna be the liability payout? And the state requires a 70% confidence level on that number, and that number is 3.2. We try to get, and the
3.2
risk,
million.
3.2 million. So the risk pool, they recommend a 90% confidence level. So that gets us to that 5 million, from 3.2 to 5 million.
And who's coming up with that estimate?
An actuary.
For the state or?
We
No,
hire an
we hire-
independent
we hire-
actuary.
Okay.
We actually use the actuary that does all the actuarial numbers for the risk pool since they have all our underlying data. So we've used those historically about every 5 years or so. We take a look at that number to make sure it hasn't changed significantly. So we don't just guess, we go to an actuary and say, hey, what do we need? County manager?
Hey Tammy, the expenditures plan for 2022 and let's say 2023 includes all the potential claims that we have, yeah, to the potential claims that we currently have?
Yes, that's basically a cash flow
Okay,
because we'll have a claim.
right.
So I kind of determine, okay, when do I think it's gonna settle or whatever, and then.
And that's the deductible that we have,
Mhm.
so that's included, this in your
Yes.
assumptions of expenditure, okay?
Yes. Yeah, you'll see in 2022, my revenue was 3.2, expenditures 3.5. I'm estimating that I'm gonna get a 300,000 bump this year for 2022. And then I'm estimating, you see 2023 revenue 3.5. Since we do 2-year budget, that's what I budgeted 2 years ago. I'm thinking my expenditures are gonna be 3.9.
Yeah, I see that,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking,
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Questions?
No questions, thanks.
My head hurts less in this, that's how I know I'm growing as a commissioner. How much my head hurts in this annual briefing. My head's not hurting that bad, so thank you.
With tomorrow, we'll take care of that.
That's an interesting measure of success. So commissioners, a decision is needed. Do you need more time to address this or you like to provide direction today?
I think they got it nailed.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
So thumbs up.
so thumbs up in all the fronts, so thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time and want to thank Robin and her staff budget staff, because this is really a team effort. It's
It really is.
complex, but we worked through it, and I appreciate that.
And thank you to all of you really to be so diligent on how you manage these funds. Each one of you, so kudos to you all.
Good numbers, people here.
So who didn't get put on there? Sarah didn't get on there?
Maybe Sarah can turn on her camera, so you can meet her. She's my new executive assistant.
You can stop sharing the screen. Can you stop sharing the screen?
She's been fantastic, and so
she
far,
is.
she's done a lot of work on her.
Woohoo, Sarah!
Employee appreciation, she's got great organizational skills, and we're just really lucky that she joined our team. Thank you, Sierra.
Welcome
Sarah.
aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, and we finished
Early.
early, so
Yeah.
we are adjourned. Thank you.